I want to talk to you about something that keeps a lot of families up at night. And I want to talk about it honestly, the way I wish someone had talked to me about it 10 years ago, before I almost made a decision I could not have taken back. My name is Ruth. I am 89 years old. I live alone in a small house in western North Carolina. No daily caregiver, no medical alert button around my neck, no one checking in to make sure I took my pills, just me, and a choice I made 4 years ago that I believe saved my independence and probably my life. 3 years ago, my daughter Margaret sat across from me at this very table and slid a folder across the surface. Inside were brochures, 4 of them, assisted living communities, memory care facilities, what they call independent living, which I always thought was a strange name for a place where strangers manage your schedule. She wasn't being cruel. She was scared. She had watched me struggle to get up from a chair without pushing off the armrests. She had noticed I was eating less. She had seen me squint at my pill bottles because my hands were shaking. She loved me, and she was frightened. And so she did what frightened people do. She brought solutions. I looked at those brochures for a long time. Then I closed the folder and slid it back to her. I said, "Margaret, give me 90 days. She said, "For what?" I said, "To fix what's actually broken." Because here is the thing nobody tells you. And I mean nobody, not your doctor, not your children, not the well-meaning friends who forward you articles about senior living. The reason most older adults lose the ability to live independently is not the reason they think it is. It is not one dramatic event. It is not a single diagnosis. It is a slow, quiet accumulation of small deteriorations, each one invisible on its own, that compound over years until one morning the person in the mirror cannot do what they could do 6 months ago, and they cannot explain exactly when that happened. And because nobody named the cause, nobody fixed it. They just managed the symptoms. They added a railing. They bought a shower chair. They hired someone to come 3 days a week. And each accommodation, while kind, told the body one more time that it did not need to do that thing itself anymore. That is not care. That is a slow surrender dressed up as help. What I did in those 90 days and what I still do every single day falls into 3 areas. Not 5 habits, not a 10-step program. 3 fundamental things that address the actual causes of dependency in older adults, not the symptoms. I am going to tell you what they are, why they work, and how to start today. Whether you are 70 or 85, whether this is for you or for someone you love. The first thing, rebuild the foundation. Strength, not exercise. When most people hear the word exercise, they think of effort, of sweating, of something you do until it hurts and then stop. That is not what I am talking about. What I am talking about is functional strength, the specific muscle groups that determine whether a human body can operate independently. There are 4 of them. Your legs, your grip, your core, and the muscles around your hips. That is it. Everything else is secondary. When those 4 areas are strong enough to function, you can get off the floor if you fall. You can carry your own groceries. You can lower yourself onto a toilet and stand back up without gripping the wall. You can catch yourself on a staircase. When any one of those four weakens past a threshold, and that threshold is different for everyone, you start needing help. Not because you are old, because that specific muscle group failed. I started doing 4 things every single day. Chair stands, sitting down and standing up from a firm chair, 10 times in a row, slowly and with control. Grip squeezes, I use a small rubber ball, 30 squeezes each hand, morning and evening. Seated leg lifts, sitting upright in a chair, lifting each leg straight out and holding for 5 seconds, 10 repetitions each side. And hip bridges, lying flat on my back, feet on the floor, lifting my hips toward the ceiling and holding, 10 repetitions. The whole routine takes 11 minutes. Within 6 weeks, I stopped pushing off the armrest to stand up. Within 3 months, I carried my own groceries from the car to the kitchen without stopping to rest. My daughter came to visit and watched me stand up from a low garden chair without touching the armrests, and she stood very still for a moment, and then she said, "When did that happen?" I told her it happened in 11 minutes a day over 90 days. She cried. I let her. The second thing, restore the senses, vision and balance. Here is something that is almost never talked about in conversations about senior independence, and it should be the first conversation anyone has. Falls are the number one reason older adults lose their independence and enter institutional care. Not heart disease, not stroke, falls. And falls do not happen because people are weak, though weakness makes them worse. Falls happen primarily because of 2 things that nobody is fixing: deteriorating vision and an undertrained vestibular system. That is the system in your inner ear that tells your brain where your body is in space. Most people over 75 are walking around with a vision prescription that is 2 years out of date and a balance system that has never once been deliberately trained. Their brain is receiving blurry, delayed information about where their feet are and what the floor looks like, and their body is responding to that bad information. Naturally, they fall. The vision piece is simple. Get your eyes checked every single year, without exception. Not every 2 years, every year. And if the light in your home is dim, change it. Put brighter bulbs in every room you walk through at night. The bathroom, the hallway, the kitchen. Light is not decorative at our age. Light is safety infrastructure. The balance piece takes 4 minutes a day. Stand near a counter you can touch if needed. Stand on 1 foot for 30 seconds, then the other. Eyes open first, then, when you are ready, eyes closed, because closing your eyes forces your vestibular system to do the work without relying on sight. Do this every single day. My neighbor Frances is 79. She had fallen twice in 1 year. She was terrified to walk on uneven ground. Her daughter had installed grab bars in every room and was talking about moving her closer. I showed Frances this exercise. I stood next to her in her kitchen the first morning. She wobbled. She laughed at herself. She held the counter. 3 months later, Frances walked across her backyard uneven grass, slight slope, in the autumn without hesitating and without looking at her feet. She told me afterward, "I forgot what it felt like to just walk." Her daughter canceled the conversation about moving. The third thing, protect the mind. Isolation is the silent accelerator. I saved this one for last because it is the one people resist the most. It is the one that sounds the least medical and is therefore the easiest to dismiss. But it is, in my experience, the one that determines everything else. Loneliness accelerates cognitive decline faster than almost any other single factor. This is not my opinion. This is what researchers at institutions that study aging have found again and again, that socially isolated older adults show significantly faster deterioration in memory, decision-making, and physical health than their connected peers, regardless of their baseline health status. In plain language, you can do the chair stands, you can train your balance, you can eat well and sleep enough. And if you are deeply alone, your brain will still begin to shrink from the inside out, quietly, without symptoms that anyone notices until they are impossible to miss. This is the mechanism that fills nursing homes more than any other. Not broken hips, broken connection. What I do is specific, not vague. I am not telling you to join a club or find some hobbies. I am telling you to identify 3 people and contact at least one of them every single day. A phone call, not a text. A voice. Hearing another voice and having your own voice heard, that is what the research points to, not passive consumption of television or scrolling through photographs on a phone. Actual conversation. I have 3 people. My daughter Margaret, my friend Connie, who I have known since 1987, and my neighbor Arthur, who is 81 and lost his wife 2 years ago and sometimes just needs someone to talk to about nothing in particular. Some days I call all 3. Some days I only have time for one. But there has not been a day in 4 years where I spoke to no one. Not one day. Because I understand now that my mind is not separate from my body. It is part of the same system. And the same way I would not skip the chair stands because my legs need stimulus to stay strong, I do not skip human contact because my brain needs it to stay clear. Now let me connect these 3 things the same way I connected them in my own life, because they are not independent of each other. Physical strength gives you confidence in your body. Confidence in your body makes you willing to move, to go out, to engage. When you move and engage, you maintain your balance and your social connection simultaneously. Maintained connection keeps your mind sharp and your mood stable. A stable mood makes it easier to maintain the discipline for the physical work. And so on, in a circle that either spirals upward or collapses inward, depending entirely on where you begin. Most people wait for a crisis to begin. A fall, a diagnosis, a folder of brochures on a kitchen table. I am asking you not to wait. The 90 days I gave my daughter, I did not do them because I was ready. I did them because I was not willing to let readiness be the requirement. I started before I felt like it, before I believed it would work, before I had any evidence that it would make a difference. The evidence came later. It always does. I want to speak directly now to the adult children watching this. The sons and daughters who love their parents and are frightened and are researching options at 10 o'clock at night. I understand why a facility feels like the responsible choice. It feels contained, it feels supervised, it feels like you have done something. And there are absolutely situations, genuine medical necessity, advanced dementia, conditions that require round-the-clock clinical care where that is the right answer, and I would never argue otherwise. But if the reason your parent is struggling is muscle loss, balance deterioration, and loneliness, and for the vast majority of older adults who enter facilities, it is exactly those three things, then a facility does not fix what is broken. It manages what is broken in a comfortable, expensive building. What fixes it is 11 minutes of functional strength work, 4 minutes of balance training, and 1 real phone call every day. Before you sign anything, before you move anyone, give the person you love 90 days, and these 3 things. Go through them together if you can. Be the voice they call. Stand next to them in the kitchen while they wobble on 1 foot and learn to laugh at themselves. That is not a lesser option. That is the better one. I gave my daughter 90 days. At day 30, I stopped needing the nightstand to get out of bed. At day 60, I walked to my mailbox and back without thinking about it. At day 90, Margaret came to visit, and we sat at this table, and I made the coffee, and I carried both mugs from the counter without spilling, and she looked at me for a long time and said nothing. And then she said, "I'm not worried about you anymore." That was the only thing I had wanted to hear for 3 years. I am 89 years old. I live alone. The folder is still in a drawer somewhere. It is going to stay there. And if you start today, yours can too.